Welcome back, guys. What's up? I'm making a dope-ass Hotline Miami retro anime style game. It's gonna be sick. I just want to share with you guys what I worked on this week. First of all, I spent a couple of days this week working on the narrative. Inspiration just hit me. You're having a dream about wanting to become the greatest samurai of all time, and you're going on this trip accompanied by an older guy who is basically like your mentor. He's a legendary old samurai who's decided to become a teacher instead. He instructs you that you're going to have to defeat the 4 most notorious other samurai. So the structure I came up with is there's going to be a kind of backstory behind the relationships that this old samurai has with all of the other more notorious samurai, and as you're working your way through the levels, he'll be kind of revealing the backstory and the relationship between him and the current samurai that you're working your way up to, so that when you get to the boss fight, it's kind of like building the tension until you finally get to meet the guy and then actually have the boss fight with him. And not really a super complicated story, pretty simple and straightforward, but I have some really cool ideas with what I want to do with that. Over on the art side of things, we got a couple sweet new animations from Amanda, our artist. We got a dashing animation, which is a little bit hard to see because of just how fast the dashing happens in the game, but you can see it very well when you first start a level and you smash through the first door, because I added a cool new effect where you kind of smash through the door slow-mo anime style. Even cooler than that is we have this transitional animation where at the beginning of every level I wanted to do a really cool badass like take out your sword kind of animation. On the gameplay side of things, I added a kind of frame freeze effect every single time you hit an enemy. Katana Zero does something similar like this, but Katana Zero is a bit of a slower paced game and mine's super fast paced, so I had to make it a lot more subtle in my game. And then as I mentioned earlier, I added the cool slow-mo at the beginning of the level and slow-mo at the end of the level effects. And the other major change I made this week was I was thinking a lot about the item usage in the game. So before I had it set up in pretty much the same way how it works in Hotline Miami, where there's just items throughout the level, or you hit a guy and then it drops on the floor and you pick it up. And I feel like in Hotline Miami that works well because whatever weapon you have, that's your primary attack, and usually whatever drops from enemies or you find on the floor, it's going to be a lot more powerful than your basic punch. So there's this huge incentive to go and grab that stuff. And on top of that, you're not necessarily in a rush to do anything in Hotline. There's a lot of different strategies you have for how to approach things. But the way I've been designing my game, and the thing that's the most fun about it, is keeping the intensity ramped up so that it's much more of a like constant non-stop action, dashing from one guy to the next kind of thing. I found that in my game, having the items on the floor doesn't really work as well because it's just a reason to break up your flow. So after thinking about it a lot, I came up with the idea instead of kind of like how in Hotline Miami at the beginning of every level you can select a mask to use. I made it so that at the beginning of our levels, you select which item you want to equip. And otherwise it works the same way. There's no limit to using it. There's no cooldown or anything like that. You can spam it as much as you want. The only limitation is that you have a limited quantity of it. It still allows you to strategize and to decide when and where you want to use these items, but you don't have to stop or ever think about actually going to the items and breaking the flow of your attacks just to go and pick them up. So I'm pretty excited about that. And as you progress through the game, you'll unlock more items, and then you'll have a bigger pool of items to select from at the beginning of each level. And then the last cool thing for this week is our sound designer, Lorenzo. He got around to finally, he's been working on this stuff for a while, but we finally got around to actually implementing some of it into the game. So I'm gonna give you guys a preview here of what some of the sound effects sound like. Keep in mind, this is a work in progress. It's just the first pass, but I think it's pretty satisfying and feeling pretty good already. And as for Alex, our musician, I've been working with him to experiment with our music. He's come up with a handful of tracks that we've been playing around with. And originally we were going for some more kind of Asian instrumental lo-fi type of sound. We're trying to experiment now a little bit more with the original lo-fi, like very sample heavy type of music, like Nujabes and Fat John and stuff, which is a couple of the guys that were big names on the Samurai Champloo soundtrack, and also looking at some of the tracks from Cowboy Bebop with like the jazzy kind of influences. Okay, now in other news this week, first of all, I have to issue a correction for my video from last week. I was telling you guys a story about a girl who was telling me about a YouTube video she watched where this Komodo dragon ate some animals and this whole fucked up thing. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, in the video, I referred to this girl as this girl, and it has since been brought to my attention that I should have referred to her as a queen. So my apologies to Our Lady for that. I've been trying to work a lot on my daily routine recently, and I think I've gained a little bit of insight into how that works. Maybe it'll be of some help to you guys, I don't know. But I've noticed that I have a few different patterns when it comes to my daily behavior. And I think of one as kind of the degenerate path of behavior, where I wake up in the morning and then I watch TV or some other time wasting activity, and then that sets me down on a path of eating unhealthy, not exercising, that kind of stuff. Like I said, the degenerate way of life. Then I have this polar opposite path where I'm still not eating very healthy or sleeping well or anything, but I'm hyper productive. First thing in the morning I get up, I sit at the computer, and I suddenly find myself 4 hours later still working away at something, probably on the game. But that's not very healthy either, or sustainable. And then there is a middle path, and this is the ideal one, the one that I strive for, where I wake up in the morning, I go and I get some exercise in, I eat healthy, maybe read a book for a little bit, get a good 6, 8, maybe even 10 hours of work in, don't look at social media and other shit like that. And that's the ideal one that I go for. But I've noticed that I have an issue with a kind of momentum thing, where I think it's really all about patterns that you create in your mind in terms of the behaviors that you associate with other behaviors, okay? So what I mean is, when I, for example, sit down to watch TV, the second I do that, it's dangerous, because even if I had spent the rest of the day working really hard, and just I've got all my shit together, everything's going well, as soon as I sit down to watch TV, I watch one episode of something, the urge is so strong to just start to lay there and spend the rest of the day watching TV. Whereas if I sit down and start working, the urge is so strong to just keep constantly working. And if I go and do that more balanced routine, where first I get some exercise done, I take care of some other tasks, then I do some work, and so on, I manage to do all the healthy stuff. And so what I'm trying to say is, I notice it, if I try to like step back and look at my behavior objectively, I notice that there's a connection between which behaviors are easy to start doing based on what I'm currently doing. If I start watching TV and being lazy, it's easy to start doing any of the other things I do on a lazy day. And if I don't think about it or put any effort at all, that's inevitably what I'm going to do. If I start doing the hardcore productive stuff where I'm just like immediately working on the game and not doing anything else, same thing there. It's so easy to just keep working without thinking about it, but it's really hard to switch into anything else. And so I feel like the trick behind getting to that good routine, I guess in a way this is really obvious, but it still feels insightful to me to notice how indulging in what seems like a trivial behavior, like for me, like I said, watching TV, in my mind, it seems like the neural connection or something between that and being lazy in general is so strong that it makes it a lot harder for me to do anything else. And I have to put a lot of effort in to consistently every day do that balanced routine to get myself there, because in so much of my life, I've otherwise always done either the hyper productive or the super lazy kind of way. And I've had to make a huge effort into, I think, constructing those new habits, that those new neural connections, I guess, to get into that balanced way of life. And it's increasingly made me think a lot about how much of my behavior, and maybe our behaviors in general, and especially if you're not like a self-aware person and you don't think very much or observe yourself in this way, how easy it is to get into those patterns, and why it can be so hard for people to think about why, you know, if you gain a lot of weight, for example, and you need to start working out, or you need to start eating less, but you've never done this before, it seems like this almost impossible task, and yet That's literally exactly what you have to do. There's no easy solution. People look for other solutions and taking some kind of pill or doing this or that as like a shortcut, precisely because they've never built up the routine or the habit or that connection in your mind that you need to make it easier for you to just literally just start working out. Whereas someone who's done that before is probably more likely to be able to do that. At least that's what it seems like to me. And I feel like if you've never done that stuff before, you have to start with these really tiny versions of it and slowly build that connection to some other behavior you're doing. And maybe even there's a trick to doing behaviors that normally lead to worse behaviors in your life, but instead force yourself to just slowly start replacing it. Like you do something that's normally leads to your lazy behavior, but then replace it instead bit by bit with something that's actually a good behavior so that you can start to mix and match. Do you get what I'm saying? Anyway, this is one of those pieces of advice that's maybe a little platitudinal and it's obvious, but I think at the same time sort of insightful to see and to really think about what kind of patterns and behaviors in your life are connected to other behaviors and not try to just look at them as like singular things that you do that have nothing to do with each other and that it's just a matter of arbitrarily making choices. I think everything I've increasingly started to notice is sort of connected to everything else in the way that your mind works and the kind of behaviors that we partake in. So I don't know, maybe hopefully that's helpful to someone out there. I thought it was really interesting. And if you're younger, and by younger I mean like early 20s or anything younger than that, I know it's so hard at that age to listen to anyone who's older than you about anything because you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll figure it out later. But I would really strongly advise you to get a good daily routine down. Get some discipline down because I'm fucking telling you, when you get older, it is so much harder to do this stuff. You know, it's harder when you have a whole decade or 2 decades of certain consistent kinds of behavior. It becomes so much harder to break those patterns when you're older, and it's so much easier when you're still that much younger. And I know for this generation especially, it's probably even harder even at a young age to do that stuff because you got so many gizmos and gadgets and all this bullshit distracting you. But anyway, that would be my advice to you if you want to do anything particularly difficult or successful with your life. It's really important to get those habits. And you might have heard this a lot from other people too, but it really is true and has become so obvious to me how motivation isn't enough to get you almost anywhere. That's kind of just the starting point, but it's also a very fleeting kind of feeling. Then you actually need discipline. You need the ability to have the habit of doing things you don't want to do, to know how to just work towards things and to sit down and to focus and concentrate and live healthily and all that. If you want to get really far, I think, or at least have the best chance of getting really far. Speaking of getting really far, what the fuck is the deal with the YouTube algorithm? I thought I had slowly begun to figure this shit out. And then I look, let me show you guys what happened. Recently, over the past few months, I found a formula that seemed to work decently, at least a lot better than when I first started out, and I thought I was getting the hang of it, and I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna stick with this style for a little while, see how it works out. And it was working pretty decently, but then recently, for example, with my shorts, I basically have just been taking a shortened version of these YouTube episodes and then turning them into shorts, and I used a specific title, a specific description, whatever, okay? So one time I post one of these videos, and I got 2,400 views. Now that's by far the best one that I had so far. Literally like a week or 2 later, I posted a video, a short, that was almost exactly the same. Different video, but same format, same title, same description. I shit you not, this video got 30 views. Now, can somebody explain that to me? How does that make any sense? The best guess that I had is maybe YouTube thinks that I'm literally just re-uploading the same video because I used the exact same title and description. So I thought maybe it was that, but then I've had the same issue now with my regular YouTube videos. Normally with these kinds of videos that I've been doing, I would get at least, let's say, 300 views. And that's like a bad example. Usually they get at least 500. I've had a couple cases now of at least 1,000 and one that did like 2,000, right? A couple weeks later, I post another one. Again, exact same, all that stuff I just described, 130 views. What? Again, what the fuck? How does that make any sense? Why did YouTube suddenly decide this isn't interesting to anyone? Is it just because less people are commenting on that particular video? I don't know. I have no idea what's happening. But whatever. I'm not worried about it. I'm gonna figure it out as I go along. I'm a smart guy. For the time being, I've decided that, you know what, I don't give a fuck. I think I've said this already in a couple videos before, but I'm just gonna make these videos however the hell I feel like it. Rather than trying to do a particular format or anything, I'm just gonna mess around and whatever. I want this to be just a chill place where we hang out and have a good time, and I show you guys my sick game. And yeah, whatever. Alright, anyway, that's all I got to say for this week. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe for regular updates on my samurai game. If you want to support me, check out my first game. It's totally free. The link is in the description below. Maybe leave me a review. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.